Hello, I'm Josh Bergstrom, your host for the Pure Life Ministries Podcast. After asking AI how many dating apps are out there, I learned that an estimated 2,500 dating websites and apps are used in the US alone, with over 5,000 globally. Clearly, relationships are highly sought after, and the sheer number of these dating platforms reflects our God-given desire for connection. But it's important not to cheapen the sacredness of marriage by mindlessly scrolling through profiles of people who simply check a few boxes off on your list. God places a high value on the purpose of marriage in our lives, and in seeking to find Mr. or Mrs. Right, we must do the same. On today's episode, we will be talking about dating and relationships from a Christian perspective. 3 married staff members join me in studio to share from their own experience how the Lord led them through the dating days and how they took a meaningful biblical approach on their way to saying, I do. That's what's on the show today. Let's get to it. All right, well, today we have probably a fun little Q&A session. We're going to be talking about dating and relationships on the Pure Life Ministries podcast. Kind of crazy. And this is the first time, I believe, that everybody on the podcast is married and has kids.
Yeah, wow.
So
That's pretty cool.
This is a monumental episode. So thank you guys for being here. We have the Director of Residential Counseling, Luke Imperato. Welcome. We have the Director of Ministry Outreach, Patrick Hudson, and we have the Residential Program Manager, Gabriel Gonzalez. Thank you guys for being here today.
Certainly good to be here, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
So since we're talking about marriage, marriage is amazing, and it's as old as creation, give or take a few days. So it's one of the oldest institutions in history. Just about every culture has marriage to some degree, in some shape or form. But nowadays there's this whole wedding industry that's out there, and it's actually fairly new. It really kind of started in the 80s and 90s. So I did a little research on how much the average wedding costs. So back in the 70s, the average wedding cost $2,000. Wow. I mean, that's not chump change or anything like that, but today it's almost $33,000.
Wow,
Believe it.
So there's this website called the Wedding Report, and it said in 2025 in the U.S. alone, $66 billion is how much people spent on weddings. That's a lot. Yeah. Very lucrative industry.
Yeah.
And so we see many people will focus a lot on the wedding day, but aren't really preparing for the marriage. And the wedding day is so crazy, so hectic. I'm glad we filmed it because I don't really remember a whole lot of it. But we want to focus today on preparing for marriage, what that looks like. And I just wanted you guys to share a little bit with our audience, how you met your significant other, how long did you date, how long you've been married now, how many kids, all those nice, fun little things that people want to know about you guys. So, Luke.
All right, so I met Courtney, I got to say it was almost 2 years before we got married, but we had a break in that time. So Courtney has all the dates logged. I just go off of what she tells me. So something like that. But we've been married for just over 3 years, 3.5 years or so, and we're still in the honeymoon phase. I just want to put that in there.
Okay.
Right out the gate.
That's great.
Yeah. And by the looks of things, I don't think that's going to change, actually.
Wow. Okay.
That's
good.
Yeah,
what is your secret? We should do a whole episode on just that.
You know what? I'd love to share. But anyway, we have... no, I do love Courtney. We have 4 children now, 4 kids, 2 and under. Our first set were twins, so it's kind of cheating.
That's good. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's a good cheating.
Yeah. But so it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff going on at home, but we are in love with each other.
Good. All right. Patrick?
Wow, it's kind of nerve-wracking talking about this. I met Joella, I guess technically when her brother graduated the program in December of 2021, but I don't think either of us really count that. March 5th, 2022, I think is when I met her. And if any ladies are listening, they'll probably appreciate that we met 8 days after Joella caught the bouquet at her friend's wedding.
Wow.
So for whatever superstition that's worth. So her brother I was the intern dad for the ministry. So we bring guys into the internship, and I was living with them, just kind of spiritually more mature person. And so her brother joined us. Her brother's behind the camera right now listening to this. And
No
she started visiting him because she moved to the area to work at the Creation Museum. And, I just kind of ignored my feelings for a long time on the matter until your wife told you that she thought that Joella and I would make a cute couple. And you had the audacity to tell me that.
So you started.
So I couldn't deny my feelings at that point.
Good for you, Josh.
Yeah. And so
You're welcome.
I can get into maybe some of the more details of what the Lord did during that time. But we ended up praying about it, talking to leadership about it, and we dated for 4 months and then got engaged on New Year's Eve and got married 9 months later. So we've been married almost 2.5 years. We have one child who is almost a year old. Someone once told me that they didn't think we ever had a honeymoon stage. So I tend to think that our relationship is awesome. I mean, it's not perfect, but I love Joella. I love, she's just such a gift from the Lord.
Oh, how sweet.
Well, man, all of that sounds so good. I had a couple of sentences, but if you're if you're going into details, Mercy and I, we met in 2022. I was best man to one of my good friends who was a part of the ministry here for his wedding, and she was maid of honor. And that's how we actually got connected. And then after some interest, we had I think about 4 or 5 month hiatus. There was a peak of interest, and then everything went very cold. And I couldn't shake her from thinking about her. What is she doing today, kind of thing. And, she couldn't either. And eventually, Pastor Ed was contacted by her dad and asked, is Gabriel interested? Because if not, she really believes that she needs to move on, and she hasn't had that release, that freedom yet. So after that, Pastor Ed had a conversation with me, and I said, yeah, I'm interested. And so we dated from July all the way, got engaged in March of 2023, and got married in October. So we had dated a little over a year and some months, and we do also have one child, and have really I think what these guys have said, just enjoyed marriage and enjoyed getting to know each other even more. Our relationship was long distance, so our getting to know each other really kicked off after we got married. We found out we were having a baby just several months later. So, but yeah, it's been awesome. And Mercy is, like what these guys have mentioned, for their wives, is just the same as me. She is a gift, and I can say that she was made perfectly for me, and I believe myself for her. We complement each other, and of course it's not perfect, but it is love.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you guys for sharing all that. I guess I should probably share my story a little bit.
Yes. Ooh, back into the annals of history.
No, well, we've almost been married 20 years, and so we met freshman year of college. So 2002 we started dating. We dated for 4 years. We're engaged for 1 year, and then got married in 2006. And so, I mean, like you guys, marriage is wonderful. It's great to marry your best friend, and then to have kids. I have 3 kids, a 14-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So it's quite a ride. We've got the teenagers in there, so Yeah, so like 3.5 years, my oldest is going to be an adult. That's scary. So,
Wow.
Pray for brother. Okay, so I got to put a disclaimer out there too. Like, we're not saying like we are the end all be all of like dating relationships. Like, this is all law. This is all set in stone. This is just what we have learned, what you guys have walked through yourselves, and you're just giving your advice of how you walked through it, how you prayed about it. Because all this is bathed in prayer. All this was not just like, hey, this is a good idea. Let's try it. So we try to do it from a biblical perspective, and that's what we want to put out there. This is a biblical perspective. So let's get into that first question. And Luke, I'll start with you. How difficult was it for you to keep God as your first priority in your relationship, as opposed to Courtney and you guys' significant others, from dominating your thoughts?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. And if you're watching this and you're kind of like following Pure Life Ministries, then you probably have a history of sexual sin or being addicted to some form of pornography or something like that. So in a way, kind of the background is like, if I start dating, is this just going to like possess me and take over and be what's captivating my thoughts? And I'm just, instead of viewing porn, I'm now just going to lust after a woman that and just like put a label of it's okay because I'm going to marry her. And first of all, I would say is you got to get at the root of that whole battle. And because Paul said all things are lawful, but not all things are profitable. I'm not going to be controlled by anything. And so to keep your relationship with the Lord priority as number one, that's foundational. And you've got to work on that, so you got to go through that season of brokenness and surrendering your life to the Lord, breaking free from a lifestyle of selfishness and pride and everything that just fed your sexual sin, and really begin to walk in a surrendered life to the Lord where you could let go of a lot of areas. And then when the Lord says, okay, it's time now for me to give you this gift, you're already not in a lust-driven, selfish, motivated lifestyle. You've already kind of put to death that to a degree. Keeping things a priority, though, I guess we'll touch on this a little bit, but I can't avoid it, is the time that you spend. Primarily, every morning I'm spending at least 2 hours with the Lord, and having that daily devotional life is key. I can't continue a thriving relationship with the Lord without that daily devotional life. So now when I'm bringing in someone I'm dating, at least initially or if in the beginning stage, you really have to limit how much time that you give that individual, because it can become an overpowering force, and it's exciting and it's good. But just checking yourself with that whole thing and making sure that the Lord is number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can offer a little bit of a practical, like this is how the Lord kind of helped some of what he's saying come about. I'd been out of sexual sin for 3.5, 4 years. I don't know, fuzzy on the dates, but, leading up to the time that we were going to start dating, I was praying to surrender marriage to the Lord because I really wanted it. It was like a strong desire. So I was like, I can't be controlled by this desire. So I'm surrendering it to him. So that in the middle of that is when your wife or told you to text me.
Oh, wow.
And I had to, so then I'm like, Lord, what in the world are you doing? Like, this is not okay. And so I actually started like, I'm going to make a concerted effort to pray about it. And what happened for me was that God, it was like I had a honeymoon with Jesus. It was like there was this flood of love for him, and everything going on with Joella was just this little stream in the midst of it. So that it was kind of like God set my thoughts really strongly on him. And then I finally said, okay, I'm going to talk to leadership. And I talked to every one of the leadership at the time about it. And that was like painful. It was like a 2-week, like, however high I'd just been, I was like in the ground spiritually, emotionally. But what it did for me, well, and then after that, I'll say, I talked to Pastor Steve when we finally started dating, and he helped me set some boundaries, which we'll probably talk about in a minute. All of that put me in this place where I wasn't controlled by my emotions. You know, I don't know how to say this. I hope it makes sense. The way I feel about Joella is unlike any feelings I've had for any person ever before. It's a different kind. It's always been different. It wasn't that squishy, like overly, it's been a deep commitment, even from early on. And I guess, what's my whole point? Has it been difficult keeping God a priority? I'm not saying I did it perfect, but for me, no, but it's because there was a real, like the whole thing started by seeking the Lord and having it be a spiritual experience to go into this thing and to move forward with it.
Can I just add one thing to that, or Gabe, were you going to go?
Go for it. Yeah.
Is, how difficult is it to keep the Lord number one? I'd say it is actually very difficult because it's coming out of a lifestyle of sexual immorality and breaking free from that. I think of my time in the program. I think of all of the breaking that needed to take place, the fight for freedom from all of that lust. That was a very grueling, difficult process of repentance. But all of that was needed and necessary to lay the foundation so that I wasn't in just a lust-driven idolatry. So when I came into a time of seeking a marriage, that kind of flesh aspect of me had really been dealt a death blow. Was that difficult? Extremely difficult. But you have to go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the thought that was coming to mind also, is that this never should have happened for any of us. This is all a miracle, and not trying to make it something so spiritual, but there was a death to self that needed to take place. And I even remember going to Pastor Jordan. There were other opportunities to date within the ministry that just never opened up. And I needed a life that was walking in submission and a yieldingness to the Lord and a denial of self. That's just the practical Christian life, very simply put. And without that in place, it would have been foolish for me to begin to take on a relationship. Some of the tendencies or the pulls, to keep God first versus the pulls of having her, constantly in the mind. Again, like these guys have said, it just wasn't that much of a struggle. And I would say to anybody who's having those battles, those are some red flags that probably something is off in your walk with God, because it is difficult when you have been given over to pleasure and a self-centered life. It is right when God is first and this individual is brought in as a flow, like Patrick said, as a stream that goes along with. In fact, this person, this is how I remember Pastor Ed telling me, I see the Lord being mercy complementing your walk with the Lord. I see you shining brighter in that sense. Like you look like you're coming into something different in a right way. This isn't oppressive. It's not heavy. Mercy's actually bringing out a different element of your life, and I see that in the Lord. I'll just throw this in there. I reached out to her dad first. That was her covering. And so when I made that communication with him first, before I even began dating her, that set for me just a standard that this is someone that's got a protection, and she's watched over and she's covered by her leadership and her spiritual authority. And so that put her in a right perspective for me. So I wasn't in this place where I'm constantly having to come and grab her, or in my thoughts, take possession of or have something or go into fantasy about, because I was already coming under her dad, and out of respect and honor, that was just something that was established with me, that I believe really helped keep God centered first.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, being a sexual sin ministry, when we say you got to take your thoughts captive, we definitely initially go to, we got to take those sexual thoughts captive, right? Because that's where our mind has always been. But that goes to other things too, because somebody that God puts in your life, they could become an idol. And so even then, you still have to take those thoughts captive. And like you said, it's exciting and it's fun. And that's good. I mean, God created marriage for a reason, and it is exciting. But we always have to keep, it's a battle sometimes. We always have to try to keep God up at the top, because when we get into relationships, we can get emotional, and we don't want to make emotional decisions, especially when we start getting into these relationships. You want to bring your wife into these decision makings with God at the front, God at the top. So we'll move on, because we keep talking about all this stuff. Pure Life, obviously, men come to us who are bound in sexual sin. We were bound in sexual sin, and so guys who come in, not everybody have crossed lines physically. A lot of them have. And maybe a lot of these guys probably regret what they did. You guys coming through the program, what did you guys do with the physical boundaries? Like, what did you set? Did you have like pretty extreme limits? Like, I'm not going to hold hands or anything, no kissing. What did you guys do?
Yeah, I think as a setting the stage, like I didn't have lines before coming to the program. You just did what you felt like. So with Joella, I feel for some reason I'm nervous I'm going to get like hate mail or shot for saying this, but we didn't kiss until we got married. So I'll start. I'm just going to do it the most extreme one, and then I'll talk about a couple other things. But I will say this about the physical stuff. It is not the most important part of our relationship. This is how I felt before Pure Life. It's like all about the physical, and then there gets to this point where you get kind of like, that's all the relationship is based off of. And then you're like, what do we even have in common? Like the relationship fizzles because that stuff wears off. So the spiritual, but the emotional, the intellectual, like all of that other stuff is what's going to last, and I think make a relationship beautiful and filled with love. And for me, what I wanted, what I strove for is that the physical would just be kind of the next step deeper for us. So yeah, it wasn't a priority. No one had to tell me to do that. It's just what I wanted to do. And I did have to kind of tell her that was not her expectation. And I'm not sure she was like super excited about it at first, but this is my other appeal for that. The moment we got engaged and started that process of waiting for the wedding, I was like, this is how Christ feels about his bride. I am eagerly waiting for her. And she is eagerly expectant of me. Yeah. And that revelation, I don't think I would have had that revelation of who God was if I hadn't made it a point to put those boundaries there, because there was that eagerness and that anticipation. As far as some other things, I guess you called it extreme. We didn't hold hands basically until I told her I loved her after I think 3 or so months. We did do that on our second date, but then I was counseled against it, kind of under the idea of not giving my flesh too much. And the same with like hugging. We didn't really hug a lot. And if so, kind of hug from the side. And those things kind of were more of like a gradual, so we held hands more, we hugged a little more as it got closer, but always within like a respectful, in a way that was appropriate and not, when you're stimulating your flesh, like trying to get something, and it wasn't for that. And so maybe these guys will add some other things. I'll just say this last thing. I had no regrets.
Sure.
It was like,
Yeah.
wait a second, God's pleased with the way I'm acting right now. Like maybe that you don't have to draw the lines I did, but at least you can go into it, unlike every other relationship I had or whatever, like, oh, God is happy with me. Like, it's an awesome feeling.
Cool. Yeah. Gabe.
Yeah, this is one of those things that kind of goes back to the first question, and it's even with establishing a relationship with God. This is why for young believers, early believers, it's just not a good idea, especially for those coming out of sexual sin, to just jump into a relationship. Your walk has got to be established. I'm not saying that there needs to be a set period of time or anything like that necessarily, but you've got to be bearing fruit. The thing that comes to mind with this is selfless, sacrificial love. And that's something that Patrick was alluding to and Luke was alluding to earlier. It's not emotionally driven, and it's not by your pleasure-seeking heart. It is a deep, consecrated love that God was building in my relationship with Mercy. I needed to honor her. And I needed to put her first, and I needed to represent Christ to her. And so when it comes to physical boundaries, that was the center, that was the core. God, what is pleasing to you, and what is going to honor her? What is going to respect her, and what is going to make her feel safe? Putting her needs first was the most important thing. But again, this is what I will also say, caveat to this is you need to be equally yoked. If you're going into a relationship and she doesn't have the same principles or desires, then you're going to end up getting into making provision for the flesh, because you're going to be putting emotion and feelings first, especially if that's what they're interested in. You may not desire that, but if that's what they're pursuing, you're going to be led easily into a snare. This wasn't a legalistic type of relationship either. I'll say that. Like Patrick was hinting at, it may sound extreme to a lot of people, not holding hands and not kissing until marriage. Mercy and I, because again, our relationship was long distant. We started holding hands several months after we were dating, but this was on our second visit because we had hundreds of miles in between us. But we were not legalistically trying to set boundaries, but some of the practical things, we wouldn't be in a house together alone. We would not hold hands in public until, and that's another story, but until we had communicated with each other, which I didn't do at first, okay? I messed that up. And she and I had it out in the front yard of her parents' house, just so everybody knows. And I had to repent. And I will say this is another caveat is you push the line or you set a boundary, you're going to have to break something to come back.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can say it is when you push it so far, like even holding hands, if she's not ready or the relationship's not ready for that, to come back off of that, something's got to break in order to be reset. Strong boundaries were essential for us in the beginning, but of course, as you get engaged and you begin to plan for the marriage and everything, things begin to loosen up, and they need to. But again, hopefully, as Luke mentioned, there's a foundation that's been set, and that foundation isn't where you're just constantly swinging from pendulum swing to pendulum swing. You have got a grounded relationship between the two of you, and that's what Mercy and I wanted. We wanted Jesus Christ to be first. We wanted him to be honored and really represented to others as this is the one who we're following. We're not following each other's emotions. We're following Jesus. And so, we had input from other people as well. That was a huge blessing for us on physical boundaries. You have to be open. You have got to be willing to get input from not just mentors or people that are over you. That's important, but also going to people that have been walking this thing out and saying, what are your thoughts on this? And not being so strong about it where you're just like, that's a good thought, but I think we're going to do it our way. You've got to be humble and willing to hear other people's input. So those are just some of the thoughts and experiences I had.
That's good.
Yeah. The physical is connected so much to the heart, so much to the emotions. And it's all on a trajectory. We're going somewhere. And so you have to be very careful when you start physically with someone, where is this going? What are you triggering? What are you initiating inside? Because if the emotions and then, like Patrick said, the flesh starts to rise up, men, we know when we've crossed a line. And so that's where Gabe is saying you can't make a legalistic maybe line for everyone. But just to be very clear, really what's being contended is kissing. Okay. We could all agree that you should not be having sex with your girl you're dating, right? I mean, we're not getting all intimate on a couch together, tied up in a knot, no, absolutely not. There is no room for like that type of physical affection with someone that you're dating. So really we're talking like the biggest maybe boundary line we're crossing is kissing. You could play around with the hand holding and, but okay, you just have to be really careful with that. For Courtney and I, we didn't kiss until the wedding day, and that was something we like. I appreciate what Gabe said. We got to communicate. You got to talk about that because you have to be on the same page with there. And we did hold hands, but even there was times where it was like I had to stop myself, and say, okay, wait a minute, I'm getting too emotionally attached with this thing, and it's making me struggle at night or later on. And I'm like, okay, let's not make this harder than it has to be. And I really appreciate what Patrick said. I look back and there's no regrets. That is the problem when you try to stretch this to, how physical can we get without crossing a line? You're bound to make mistakes because there's emotions involved and you lose control of things. So just keep yourself guarded. And then that would be...
I would add to that with exactly what both of you have mentioned with there are no regrets. And that is also my testimony. The extreme, and that is so taken, I think, to an extreme that this relationship needs to be God-centered, and that's when it's without regret. When it is holy, like there's a cost in it. I'm not just allowing... I think that's what we're all trying to say is that we just didn't allow our flesh to have its way. We weren't pleasure seekers for these relationships, and there was a cost to it that we were willing to die to ourselves in a certain area, and it was hard. And there were certain things that I think for all of us, we didn't understand why we were going through this way or why this was happening, and this is difficult, and we don't understand. But at the end of it, going through it, it is without regret. It was beautiful. It was awesome. It was perfect the way the Lord had worked it all out.
Yeah. And if I can just say, you kind of mentioned you were just mentioning selflessness and self-sacrifice. That's what love is, And so if it's all about, well, what can I get from her? That's that same taking mindset. Even if it's something that's okay, if you're in that mindset where I just want to use her for my physical pleasure, it's not setting up your marriage for something good. And advice that was told to me by Pastor Ed was like, you're not her husband. You don't have that spiritual protection or covering over her, but you can start acting like that. And so that's what I would, challenge anyone listening. Like you can sacrifice your desires to care about her. You can see what emotional and spiritual needs she has and care about those more than what you can get physically. And you can protect, Joella had to forgive me for my past sexual sin. Like, she had to work through what I had brought into our marriage by not saving myself. And if you're listening and you're dating someone, you can protect this girl, because maybe you're not going to marry her. Maybe you'll, go through a process, find out it's not what the Lord wants, and you'll be, move on. And if you've taken from her, then you've done something to harm her future relationship.
That's true.
And I don't know that we take that. That's probably very foreign to think about in American dating culture, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lord takes it a lot more seriously than we have a tendency to.
Yeah, I think a good, simple biblical principle from what you guys are saying is found in the Song of Solomon: do not awaken love. Do not awaken love until the proper time. Because there's, like you were saying, there's so much connected with touch. I mean, just God made touch, for a reason, and your thoughts can just go, even if you're just like, oh, her hand is barely touching mine. I mean, so it's just best to not awaken love until the proper time.
Yeah. I have a little funny story with that. I don't know if it's awful, but on one of our dates, we were just talking, and I was getting concerned because I'm like, we're so like non-touchy-feely. I was like, Courtney, do you think this will ever do you think this will change? Like, in your mind, do you imagine us being cuddly at any point? And we both kind of just were like, well, I guess, right? And then it was just kind of this awkward thing.
And now you guys are super cuddly.
Of course, yes.
All the time.
But yeah, it does. Some of these conversations can lead to just some awkward, funny, like, high school teenage moments where you're like, she touched me, and so it's just fun times.
Well, so we talked about the physical boundaries. So what other minor boundaries, I guess I could say, like communication? Did you guys set up any other kind of boundaries that you're like, let's not cross these lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gabe.
Well, I'm glad to be able to share on this one, because we were long distance, and so this one's probably a little bit more on the extreme side. Maybe, because we just weren't seeing each other every week, besides it being on video. But all of this was completely, if I would have been listening to this podcast before coming to know the Lord, I would have called myself crazy and an extremist. And like, okay, that's good for you, but that's not how it works out here. And now coming in and having a new heart, this relationship that I had with Mercy has been absolutely beautiful, beautiful. So I wanted to say that, but I want to also emphasize the importance here, especially with communication, humility. This goes beyond just the texting and the phone calls. This goes to really having an interest in this other person that goes beyond just your boys. This is a heart connection, and communication is so essential. And it's not just I'm trying to get across my thoughts to you or what's going on in my world. Communication, and I had to learn this the slow way, and I'm still learning this, is being quiet and listening. That's a major part of communication, as especially for me, because obviously I love talking, I'll be free to admit that, but I had to learn to be quiet. I had to learn to listen. Text messaging was a huge thing for us, where we had this free reign at the beginning, and then it got tighter. Okay, so if that begins to happen, don't give up and don't freak out on those that are mentoring you or helping you. If things get tighter, that was one of the things I didn't understand. She and I didn't understand a lot at times of what we were going through, but we knew it was for our good. So, evenings, we had a certain time where we were going to close out. We were going to say goodnight. I wanted to respect her. I wanted her to get a good night's rest. I didn't want to just have this free for all until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. What good happens at that late anyways? Early in the morning, again, going back to the first question, about how was she not everything going on in my mind, and how did I keep God first? Because God was first. Yeah. And He was first in the morning for both of us. We would not respond to each other's text messages. We were in different time zones. So if I reached out to her, I knew she was going to be getting up to seek the Lord. We weren't going to engage in any long conversations via text early in the morning until we had spent our time with the Lord. That was just something that we established. We also managed to, realize we can both cross into our work days and become a distraction. Like you had mentioned, that was a reality. We had to set boundaries. So at certain times during the day when I knew I was going to be busy and she was going to be busy, we just decided we're not going to interrupt our day unless it was urgent. And then comes conversations. We talked twice a week, right up until we got married. And that twice a week consisted of several long, great, wonderful, even difficult and painful hours at times, because we had hard discussions too. I mean, we're talking about it being all, it was a lot of good conversations, but there were some that were pretty painful and we had to work through it. But they were by video and they happened twice a week. That was not easy for her and I. We didn't see it that way right away. We thought, why not more? But we knew it was for our good. And like what Patrick and Luke said earlier, we don't regret that. There was something about it was special getting to see her for those few hours on the phone. It wasn't like this buffet where we get to just call each other whenever we wanted and make time for ourselves that way. Which lastly, I'll say to the communication, we had a Sabbath. And again, it wasn't legalistic. She and I prayed about this. We talked to our mentors and they thought this was a good idea, but we weren't going to talk on Sundays at all. We committed that to the Lord and didn't talk at all ever on a Sunday, not text, not video call. And it wasn't for any special or really spiritual reason. It was so that we can invest in the people around us. We just said, listen, we have got a lot going on and we spend this amount of time talking to each other. Why don't we take some time now on a Sunday and just spend it with other people? And that was really helpful for us. I'll also add this in there for any of you that are listening that are kind of old-fashioned. Writing letters is wonderful. I still write her letters and we're married. Now I'm not mailing them. I'm just dropping them on the counter every now and then. But we wrote letters which we had time to express our heart and our thoughts, which is a lot different than being on the phone or being in person. And I got to see another side of her that I never had before. And writing her letters was a secret place in her heart that I got to see. So I would encourage that for anybody who, again, old-fashioned, but just wants to be able to communicate from a heart level. Writing letters is really sweet.
Yeah, cool. All right.
And the content of the communication. What are you guys talking about? What I had to really learn. One, that Courtney was not my student or counselee, and I wasn't her counselor. Which is hard when you work as a full-time counselor all the time, and then you just see a problem and you immediately want to fix it. So guys tend to do that. So just listening and getting to know her was huge, and also we didn't talk much about wedding plans until we were engaged. Because. Like, I think it was Patrick that brought out that point. You really don't know in those first several months or however long that time is before an engagement. You really don't know what the Lord is doing and where this is going for sure. And so when you start bringing in the content of wedding planning, it's kind of like a little bit, for us, it was just too emotional, and we would be blinded off of away from what we needed to be talking about and getting to know each other at this stage in our relationship. then also I would just say have fun as well. It doesn't always have to be a Bible study every time you talk, and that was one of the things Courtney rebuked me. She said, Luke, I don't open up with you because every time I tell you a problem, you assign me homework. And I was like, eesh. And I think I did. I think I gave her a couple pamphlets or something. It was not good. So it was pretty bad. So, okay, we had
she
to
stuck with you, though.
Yeah,
Wow,
she stuck it out.
pamphlets.
It is pretty remarkable. I don't think she read them. No, I'm kidding. I don't know. But it's just like, okay, we almost had to just take that side of the relationship, try to tone it down sometimes and just have fun and get to know each other as friends, because you want to marry your best friend.
Yeah.
So just be careful what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that is important. We did slowly work up to the talking about important stuff.
Whether you were going to say pamphlets.
Yeah, you slowly worked up to the pamphlets.
The pamphlets came out.
The pamphlets came after we got married, okay?
Oh, wow. She couldn't get away at that point, eh?
Yeah. It's hard to come back from all this.
Yeah.
So we, I'll just briefly mention, just to reiterate kind of Gabriel's point, we were close proximity, but we only saw each other once a week, talked once a week, texted once a week. And then that opened up, she started coming to the Pure Life services. And so that was like, it was good. The Gallaghers wanted her to really just be in this atmosphere and grow spiritually. And obviously we were like, oh, I get to see each other a little more. And again, that loosened up. But just that unlike Gabriel, I think we did see each other a little bit more as it got closer, because our lives being here already became more intertwined. The thing I was going to bring up, maybe this is weird, but I'll say I would have needed this advice before, is relationships with the opposite sex, I think, are actually a boundary that you kind of need to think about, like that is not your significant other. So just to illustrate my point, I had a friend who was dating someone before I came to the program, and we would go out, she and I would go and hang out together, just the two of us, which neither of us thought it was weird at all. And now I'm like, that is so inappropriate. Yeah. It is so inappropriate. And just when you start working towards, this is the woman that I'm committed to, your relationships with other women have to, I don't know how to describe it. You limit yourself. And I think that it is the reason why you see a lot of emotional and a lot of physical adultery is because I think a lot of people don't have this in their mindset, that I have to restrain my relationships with the opposite sex and my interactions with them. So, that wasn't like a boundary that anyone set up. That was something that I kind of had to learn really just by talking with Joella and really kind of getting my head screwed on straight, since, we come out of crazy backgrounds where there were no rules. But I'll tell you what, it's good.
Yeah, and as you guys were talking, I was thinking of Proverbs 25:28 that says, like a city that is broken into and without walls is a man who has no control over his spirit. And it's like, I can hear somebody saying, okay, the physical boundary, that's good, we should do that, but all these other little things, why? Well, it's good to have self-control in your life. It's good to set up these boundaries so things just don't get out of control, So I appreciate you guys sharing that as well. Speaking of out of control, I grew up in the 90s. And the idea, I don't know if it is now, I'm sure it is, but the idea of dating was, okay, late teens, late teens, that's when you start the dating scene. And, you go to you're in school and you see somebody like, okay, they're kind of cute. Let me go ask them on a date. You go to the movies, you go out to eat, you go to the mall, you just try it out. You're like, this doesn't really work. Let's try somebody else. It's just like this carousel, this dating carousel. Zero spirituality involved. It's just like, let's just try this one. Let's try this one. It's like a buffet, Yeah. But obviously we at Pure Life take a different approach. The leadership over the years, This is a very recent phenomenon here at Pure Life, is the whole dating and relationship aspect. You guys are like one of the first ones. Most of the guys on staff are single. A lot of them have come from marriages, so they know what marriage is like, but there's very few that are currently married on staff. And so being on staff has certainly changed your guys' viewpoint of relationships. You guys have just been communicating that. How did you know, Luke, we'll start with you. How did you know that you were ready for a relationship?
Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways, that question kind of has been answered a little bit throughout when we were talking about core heart issues. You know, like if you're regularly giving over to pornography, obviously you're not ready for a relationship. If you're regularly giving over to lust and whatever form of self-gratification, yeah, you're not ready. You need to get that heart issue taken care of. And then also the issue of coming under authority. That is so huge because us men, we are strong-willed by nature, and we need that will to be broken and surrendered ultimately to the Lord. But then the Lord uses spiritual authorities in our life to hold us accountable, to see things that we can't see. It's a biblical principle. It's been going on since thousands of years. But Hebrews 13:17 says to submit yourselves under a spiritual authority. And then it gives a mandate that spiritual authority actually has a responsibility from God to keep watch over your soul. And so, the exhortation that the writer was saying is, do this in a way that is joyful for them and not a real pill, right? That's my translation. But what kind of emphasis there is they have a job from God to keep watch over your soul. So you have to, in this process of humbling yourself and coming to a place of, okay, I don't have all the answers. I cannot rely on my own understanding. God, your ways are right. That process of surrendering my life and my will to the Lord, then I'm going to want to find a godly mentor, a pastor, or someone who is going to who I'm going to give the authority to really make these calls for me. Yeah. And look at my life objectively. They have to know everything. They have to be, so it has to be someone you trust and someone who is mature in their walk with the Lord. But you lay it all out there and say, okay, where do you see that I'm at? You've been working with me, let's say, for the last several months. You see my history and all of that. What do you recommend? And God will pray for them. Pray for your leaders, right? And God will give them the wisdom, and you just need to trust and obey. Some practical things, though, I would say you have to look for, you have to be under authority. That's huge. But leadership, like, are you in a position to lead a wife? So if you're considering a relationship and you want this to be a godly relationship, right? A godly woman is going to want to submit herself to a husband. So where are you going to take her? What is your calling in life? What path are you on? If she doesn't know where you're going because you're like, yeah, I'm just kind of figuring it out on the fly, I'm just living for the moment, then a godly woman's not going to want to align herself with that. Okay, so you need to stop and evaluate and say, okay, God, where are you taking me in life? Where is my calling and what do you have me do? Because I'm going in a direction and I'm asking for a wife to come and join me in this. So being able to lead is very important. And if you're still like trying to figure things out, then it's probably time to just slow down and let the Lord establish something in your life. What does your love life look like currently? Are you loving yourself or are you loving others? Are you loving the Lord? Mm-hmm. or are you still just, taking care of number one being yourself, and that's something you need to work through. That is something that needs to be repented of. And I would say in finances, that oftentimes comes up as a common, am I ready financially to support a family? Well, just a brief word on that, I would say, is instead of looking at how much someone's making or the quantity, you want to look at how they manage what they do have, okay? Because a lot of families can start off dirt poor, just making it by, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, it's sacrifices you need to make, and you're starting a family. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's mutual love there, and it's just a beautiful. It could be a real special time. But if you're frivolous with your money now, and you're in debt, and you can't manage a simple budget, you're spending more than you're making regularly, then no, you're not in any position to be getting married and to be leading the operation of a family. That's not right. So it's not. Don't get caught up with, well, I need to have enough to get a down payment on a house. I need to have enough to buy a car. I need to have my retirement settled. Well, that might not happen until you're like in 35, 40 plus years old. So you'll never get married maybe then if that's your. But how are you managing what you are currently making, and what you are your current balance sheet, and rein that in, because that'll help you to be a provider for your family in the future.
That was really good. I don't have really much to add except to say I think one thing for me, looking back, is I was emotionally stable. I was not very stable when I came to the program. And I think the immaturity you described about just doing whatever and being really frivolous is exactly who I was as a person. And I had to kind of get really stabilized to be prepared to be a strong person that Joella could look to and feel safe and feel protected and feel loved by. And because, she needs me to help her feel like, to just lead her to like some, I don't know how to say it, just to build her up and to lead her to the Lord and point her to the Lord. And if I wasn't able to do that for myself, I couldn't have done that for her. But the other thing I think that's important with being prepared is just, you have to really know that you guys are on the same page spiritually.
Yes.
So you got to work through convictions about different things. I really love Joella because we don't see eye to eye on everything down to the mint and cumin of it. But our core philosophy of life and how we see honoring the Lord is true. And I think that then from there, the way we would do that can sometimes be different, and those things complement or challenge each other. But I read a story recently. I've actually heard several stories of people who got converted and their wives or their fiancés basically were like, they got radically saved. They're like, I want to be a missionary. I want to get my all. I do not want to be in something that's going to provide me a good house, a good this, a good that. And their ladies would be like, nah, I'm out of here. And, so when the rubber meets the road, who are you going to pick, Jesus or your wife?
Yeah.
The answer is Jesus every time. And you have to have someone who's willing to be on board with you in that, because if not, I'm sure Satan is going to, he used Eve, right, with Adam. And so I think he's going to find that inroads. So you need to make sure that she is a serious Christian woman who's willing to follow you being a serious Christian man to come under the Lord's will.
Yeah, man, both of you guys, everything that I had put down pretty much has been covered and really well said. The thing too with, it kind of goes back to communication that I wanted to add to this is vulnerability. I came out of a lot of hidden sin in a lifestyle that was hypocritical to what a professor or what a Christian should be. And it was about 6 years after coming to Pure Life and graduating that I found Mercy and started talking to her. And so it was a big deal. She did not come out of a lifestyle of any type of deep, dark sin. But it was important for her to know who I was and what I was coming out of, and to be vulnerable and to really lay it down like this is the man that I am, and this is what Christ has done. Vulnerability is a huge part, I believe, of being ready for a relationship. You have to be willing to be exposed, be open, and not just keep this pretty image together. That coincides with repentance, being broken and needy, really being able to repent and humble yourself. That is, to me, as a leader, as a husband, that should be something that should already be taking effect. And that is almost a prerequisite, if I could say, for a relationship. You need to be walking this out. And vulnerability, again, is a huge part of knowing you're ready for a relationship. I would also say selfless, sacrificial love. I go back to what Patrick had said. It isn't about the emotions. This goes past the cakes and the flowers, guys, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that I think all three of us could say in our past relationships with girls, that we would go to the materialistic things in order to meet needs. And this was something that was profoundly other than. It was deep. It was God calling two different people together to be one. That is entirely, completely different than anything we can understand. And so the two lives are becoming one as you have your first interaction. And like what Luke was saying, that is most likely going somewhere if you're going to start dating. The end result being marriage, and you're going to want to have that as a desire that doesn't preoccupy your thoughts or take you away from seeking the Lord. So the other thing I would mention about a relationship, being married, is contentment. I was not looking for marriage. God brought somebody into my life that it's almost like you're called into marriage. We all are celibate. Everybody starts that way. In a way, you're called into being one with another. And I would say there is a need now today, especially for our generation. Our culture is so ready to be occupied with any relationship we can have. We need to be content with having Jesus, and that start there. And if God brings somebody into your life, like what Luke mentioned, what Patrick mentioned, you have people hopefully that you're under, that they'll affirm a relationship, they'll confirm it, and you just are simply loving other people, serving other people, walking with Jesus, and this relationship will come to fruition without you having to charge ahead and do a whole lot of stuff in the flesh. So that's, being prepared for a relationship. I put, you won't know, and if you do, you probably aren't. And Mercy said, I went over these with her, and she said, it's a little too extreme. She's a good balance for it, but don't look for a relationship as much as the relationship you're already in, which should be Jesus.
I'll say to your contentment comment too, if you're not content outside of a relationship, you're probably not going to be content in a relationship. Because, you get in the marriage boundaries, and then the devil's like, okay, new tactic.
Right.
Let's try to get him to be discontent and start looking outside. Right. And it's coming.
Others.
It's absolutely going to come for you, because the devil hates marriage.
That's right. Yeah, he does. Thank you guys so much for being here today, sharing your heart, giving some guiding principles. Can't wait to hear all the comments that will come. Be like, I followed what they said, and I've been married for how long?
I have got 10 kids now and 11 grandchildren.
So thank you guys for being here today.
Of course, yeah.
It's a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this Q&A session and that the Lord really ministered to all of you who want to approach the dating world through the lens of Scripture in a way that honors God and stands in stark contrast to the world. If you'd like more resources on this topic, visit our website and search dating. You'll find an article called How to Approach Dating as a Christian and podcast episode 393 titled, Is Purity All That Matters in Christian Dating? Pure Life Ministries exists to help others find true freedom from sexual sin through the gospel of Christ and a deeper life in God. For us to continue that mission, it takes two things, the Lord and you. So if you were blessed by this podcast, please take a moment to rate and share it with others. It only takes a second, and it can make all the difference. We'll see you next time. God bless.